With the White House engulfed in its own set of controversies, the one-two punch of Bob Woodward's book and the searing anonymous New York Times op-ed, President Trump's closest allies are opening a new counterattack against what they call disgruntled employees.
It's pretty disgusting. That's pretty sad. Perhaps it's a disgruntled person who's been thrown out because they didn't deliver on what they were supposed to do. Listen, I think you're subverting the will of the people. I mean, to try to control the presidency while not the president. You have millions and millions of Americans who voted for this.
I would certainly rather take the actual on-record account from people who are here, who have been working in this building, who have interacted with the president day in, day out, like General Mattis, like General Kelly, like myself, not disgruntled former employees that refuse to put their name on things when they come out to attack the president.
Well, I'm joined by Ashley Parker, Washington Post White House reporter and MSNBC political analyst, Jim Messina, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff under President Obama, and MSNBC political analyst Rick Tyler, former senior advisor to Newt Gingrich and Ted Cruz. Welcome all. Ashley, you're kind of at the center of the storm there, watching what they're saying, what they're not saying. Don Jr. now speaking out. Of course, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, in the first briefing, I think in 19 days. So what is the mood inside the White House? And let me just get on the record very quickly. The president just paused before boarding the plane in Pennsylvania and said that FEMA and everyone else is totally prepared. So he commented briefly. It was not audible, but I'm just communicating what he said. But Ashley, the fact is that they have been, while preparing for this hurricane, I'm sure at the FEMA level, the White House certainly gave no indication of it yesterday or this morning.
That's true. The mood in the White House, to just take the Woodward book, for instance, in the anonymous op-ed, to start with, the president is angry and frustrated. And what his son, Donald Trump Jr., said is exactly right. There is now a smaller group of people, a dwindling group, who he feels like he can trust. Within the president's orbit more broadly, and within the White House, aides sort of feel like they've been through this before. They're frustrated, too. That's why we saw Sarah Sanders coming out and pushing back. That's why we have more than 24 White House officials offering on-the-record statements pushing back on the book, although it's worth noting that many of these statements sort of say it's not true, but don't really offer any specifics or push back on any specifics. They're sort of blanket denials intended for an audience of one. That's the president. But again, within the White House, there is an awareness of this is a distraction. Deeply unhelpful, but there is actually a hurricane bearing down on the coast, and that is something they need to prepare for. They need to get the president prepared for, and that's why you're seeing, you know, as you mentioned, the president just briefly weighed in. They have a FEMA briefing later this afternoon, and so they do understand that not handling a hurricane well would just create another, first of all, actual crises for all the people involved, but also optics and political crises, and they're trying to sort of get their ducks in order now.
Well, certainly the way he handled Puerto Rico caused a lot of concern. The lack of empathy, Jim Messina. And now they've got this new cell phone policy as well, clearly a reaction to Amoroso's best-selling book.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, the first rule in politics is if you're in a hole, stop digging. And these guys are in a hole, and instead of, you know, today on the 9/11 anniversary with a major storm, you know, heading towards them, the easiest thing to do would be nonpartisan, be presidential. And instead, he wakes up this morning, sends out a million different tweets, and they spend all day once again going on the defense, trying to talk about this, the anonymous going after Woodward. We are 55 days before a midterm election, and the White House is completely tanking their local candidates' messages while Donald Trump goes on his usual partisan jihad.
And speaking of the midterms, let's talk about Texas. You know it so well, Rick Tyler. You worked for Ted Cruz. A lot of Democrats have been fooled before by hoping that they can retake Texas, and it hasn't happened in more than 2 decades.
Well, you have to look at certain indicators in the race. One is Beto has been trending.
Beto
right?
O'Rourke,
Beto O'Rourke's been
congressman.
He keeps trending upward, and obviously the goal is to peak on Election Day. He's raised an enormous amount of money. He's captured national attention. I think Cruz is likable enough in Texas, and they'll probably hang on, but this is a real challenge to the race. Texas, the problem for Republicans is Texas is a 44% white state 37% Hispanic, but 1 in 3 Hispanics can't vote because they're underage. They're younger than 18. 1 in 4 African Americans in Texas are under 18. So you can see what the trend is going to be. And if the Republican Party doesn't figure out how to become the party of those two groups in particular, it will be the minority in Texas for a long time to come.
Ashley, I know the president has a very busy campaign schedule, but at this stage, there are a lot of places, other than some Senate races in these red states, that they believe that they can pick off Democratic Senate seats. There are a lot of places that House members do not want him to travel.
That's right. And so it's sort of this funny thing where you have the president largely going into the Senate states, a lot of them where he beat Hillary Clinton, where he can be helpful in steering clear of those House races, which is smart political strategy. The rub, however, is that this is a president who puts himself at the center of everything, who ever since he came down that escalator and declared his run for president dominates everything. So even when he is not physically going to, say, a more moderate suburban district where he's not welcome, that doesn't mean that his message, his temperament, his potentially problematic tweets are not dominating the local news coverage there. So it is not as simple as simply keeping the president physically out of areas where he's not welcome, where he's not helpful, because this is a president who intentionally pervades everything, and that has become a problem, especially in their effort to hold the House.
And the Senate races, Mitch McConnell is quoted as saying today that it's going to be like a knife fight in an alley. Jim Messina.
It's really true. You know, midterm elections are about two things: voter enthusiasm and independent voters, right? Voter enthusiasm, Democrats have a 19% lead on who's more vote in this election. And independent numbers, this is where, to Ashley's point, Trump is doing real damage to his party. He was in my home state of Montana on Friday, and instead of campaigning for the Senate candidate, where he was at a rally for, he spent the entire time complaining about Anonymous and the Woodward book, completely off message, 60 days before the election in a state where he won by 12 points. It is doing real damage to his party.
We'll have to leave it there. Rick Tyler, Jim Messina. Of course, Ashley Parker, thank you. And coming up, out of control, former Secretary of State John Kerry weighing in on the Trump turmoil. Next, right here.